And we're live, and it's another week of Ammonize, and this week is one I've really been looking forward to. I do like the challenges, and we've certainly got a challenging business to discuss this week. And joining me, we have Craig Calvert of Mindful 360.
Hello, hello.
His partner, who you'll recognise, Manny St. Victor, and of course, my glamorous assistant, Lee Rickler.
Morning, afternoon, evening.
Let me quickly fling it across to invites in the same order. Craig, introduce yourself, please.
Well, Craig Calvert, and I am a certified psychometrician and the co-founder of Mindful 360. And so I've got a background in Jungian personality type theory. That's my area of expertise. As well as just neuroscience and neuromarketing angles. So that's where I'm coming into the business from.
Manny?
I'm Manny St. Victor. I'm a neuroscientist. I specialize in digital media, digital communities. For the last few years, well, my training is medical training. I went to medical school, and after my psychiatry, in the middle of my psychiatry residency, I woke up to digital media. Since while I was at Harvard, I got an early start on Facebook. You know, that's Zuckerberg's backyard, basically. So I started noticing some trends and the benefits of community and listening. And so I accelerated my understanding of that and doing empathy through the internet. So that's my passion.
Excellent. Lee, say hello.
Hello, I'm Lee Rickler. I run Point and Steady online production agency based down in glorious King's Cross in London.
Oh, glorious indeed. Anyone who hasn't been there, you wouldn't believe the delights. It's sort of like the bad end of Central Park, but without the park, isn't it?
There is a park there, yeah, there is a park. It's lovely. It's about 10 foot by 10 foot.
Yeah, just big enough to be basically it's the convenience for the local dogs, isn't it? That's
yeah,
that's
the local tramps and yeah, a lot of them. It's glorious. You know what? Google are spending over $2 billion there, so I wouldn't laugh too much at it.
Yeah, it'll pick up. You know, they've been working on the area for a long time. Anyway, for those who aren't so interested in London, let's get to the topic of the day. Now, give me a very quick description, as best you can, of what Mindful 360 is about.
The main thing that we're about is helping organizations first and foremost, but also small teams, departments within organizations, and even individuals and couples to realize more about themselves, how their brain works, to gain empathy into how different brains work, and to provide pathways of communicating better, getting more productivity out of yourself and your company without having to redo everything. It's about making some simple modifications to how you do meetings, how you talk, how you market, and so on. So that's a very aerial view of what we do. Excellent,
but sometimes the aerial view is what you need to kind of get people interested in zooming in. It's kind of like Google Maps. First of all, you look broad, and then you zoom in if you want to. And to get the street view, people have got to be interested in going there.
Right. I mean, one of our probably a challenge that Dr. St. Victor and I have is that we've been studying this so long that it's very natural for us to do a deep dive every time we communicate something. That comes naturally to us. So we really do have to kind of rein ourselves in a lot in our marketing, in our communications to keep it short and sweet, and to find which short and sweet is the sweetest.
Yep. It's one of those things where your elevator pitch has to be short, punchy, catchy to get them interested in hearing the rest. You kind of got to earn the right to give them the deep dive, because otherwise you're taking them on a journey they don't necessarily want to go on. And that's always a tricky problem. So really, it's about you've got a product that's all about smarter, more intelligent action. Is that about right?
Yes.
Absolutely. In fact, I'm writing down that you said that because that's that's a great way to put it.
From there, you can take it as deep as you like in whatever specific direction you like. But that's the core of it, isn't it? It's more intelligent action through better understanding, both of themselves and of others, their teams, their situations, their strengths and weaknesses. All of that can be added, but the whole point is better action through smarter understanding.
Yes, exactly.
You've also got a wide range of products that kind of applies to. And again, the broad overview, the kind of elevator pitch, smarter actions, better understanding, great, love that. How does it matter to me? That's where you kind of got to say, right, what job are you in?
Right, and this is where this was probably our first challenge that we had in our company, is that by the nature of what we do, every single individual over the age of 12 in the entire planet could use our services. I mean, but if you're everything to everybody, you're nothing to nobody. You can't get noticed that way. So a lot of what we did in focusing on industries, we really had to look at where do we have the most experience. We both have over 2 decades of experience in the healthcare industry, for example. So that was clearly an industry bucket for us to focus on. Education, another one that we have a significant background in. So that's where I wouldn't say that we did it arbitrarily, but we really did have to just decide specifically. We can't go into the entertainment industry. We're not going to go into a particular manufacturing niche or something. We're going to stay in our areas that we've got a personal narrative to share.
You've got that personal strength, and therefore you've got a hook. I understand your pain because I've been there. I understand your situation because I live it. Yeah, absolutely, and that's obviously allowing you to add the business managers and the entrepreneurs, because that's where you are now as well.
Yeah, I find that it's helpful when we go in and talk in a hospital type of situation. Doctors tend to get defensive to businessmen, and until you're like, oh yeah, one time I was on call, and they're like, what? Or you refer to the ER as the ED, and they're like, well, who does that? And that's a big advantage to have. Morning, Stephanie. I just saw Stephanie's message.
Yeah, she says hello to everyone. Okay. One thing I liked when we first spoke, in order to sort out what we were going to discuss on the show, was we spoke briefly about different ways that this could be targeted, and we spoke about how this would apply to one of the biggest growth industries of today, the content writer, the copywriter. In fact, writers generally, because they have to understand their market that they're selling to, and a lot of a book or any kind of reading material happens in your mind in the first place. That's why the film is always so very disappointing compared to the book, is because the book wasn't limited by a budget for their special effects. It was whatever we could imagine.
Right.
And so, do you want to quickly go into that and let's look at one of these specifics?
When you're talking about helping the writing process, or just the creative process, let's just speak it even more broadly. When you're in the business of doing something creative, that when you have an understanding of the specific pathways that different types of humans take, and sometimes it's uncomfortable for any of us to hear that we can be defined that way. But it turns out we're not the unique, precious snowflakes that we often think that we are. That there are global patterns to human behavior. And what we've actually found is that successful books successful stories, ones that really resonate with people, is where the characters seem like they're alive, where there's a ring of truth, where each action seems to naturally flow, and it doesn't seem like, oh, well, I want the story to go here, so I'm going to make this happen. Well, that can be a jarring process. When you have a templated understanding of, which is not hard to get, by the way. This is something that we can actually explain in a relatively short period of time, not within this particular hangout, of course, but it doesn't take long to get a guideline to creating characters, to creating responses to stress. Like the type that Manny and I have, for example. If you wanted to write a novel about our personality type, which is ENTP.
All day. Sorry.
Well, I can already tell you, well, here's the thing that an ENTP does. They constantly speak in analogy and metaphor. So make sure that your character relies heavily on communicating through analogy and metaphor.
And wordplay.
They like to jump in and see what happens next because, preparation is for cowards. And when we're pushed beyond our limits, when we react horribly, when we're in our bad spot, when we get pushed too far, we'll have a specific response. We'll overindulge ourselves in sensory experiences. So, I mean, this is just a short little template that if you wanted to write a believable character, it's a fascinating template system.
Yeah.
And I had a good talk.
Yeah, go ahead.
One example, I wanted to bring up a simple, specific example. Chris Lang, author of Cleanses, Birth of the Machine, I had a great conversation with him. As a matter of fact, you introduced me to him, Ammon, a while back, and him and I have been talking about his book, and we've just been having a blast with the characters. Just figure out what's the personality of each character, how the character when he's in love, and then when the stress response kicks in and he resorts to the heavy drinking, which is a sensory escape. So it's fun.
Yeah, because there is nothing more annoying. I mean, the reason I hate most horror movies is because that's the genre more than any other where the characters are subjected to whatever the author wants them to do. So they will do the most ridiculous things that nobody would normally do because that's what's got to happen in the plot. The murderer leaves them a note. Please meet me at the cemetery at midnight. Bring your own sack and shovel. Mine broke. And they will go. And it spoils the whole genre.
If you have a well-drawn character, the realism, it brings in the concept, not horror in that, but dread. Dread is far more effective. If you have a dread writer, and I wish that was an actual genre, by the way, but a dread writer is someone who gets you to care about the characters, and the only way that happens is if we see something consistent enough that we can resonate with. You can't have somebody acting like Dr. House in one paragraph and Alice in Wonderland in the next one, and just where you're switching around to where the character keeps taking on new facets. That's not how humans work. I mean, we actually stay within predictable pathways.
Yep. And you think that's recognition. Sometimes when you say to people, use archetypes, use tropes, use psychometrics in your delivery to give your story the physics, that momentum, this character will not be able to resist this when it comes because you see him barreling towards it. You need that. And the secret to enjoying something is half of pleasure is expectation. So if you're like, oh man, he could be with her, but his weakness is right there, and you feel both, and you're like, and it builds, and it's just if you disappoint someone from that, disappointment is like one of the worst emotions for a lot of people because it's like even in a story, and so when you're building up, you owe them that ending. I like to point out True Blood. True Blood had a nice wave of happy when they ended the season the way they did after 7 years. Characters weren't consistent.
But dread, I think that brings us back to Game of Thrones because we care about a lot of the characters, and yet we we know that the death rate on that show is high enough that several of our characters probably aren't going to get through it. And I think that's a nice little point to it. It doesn't have to be a horror genre to tap into that dread. Okay, so this is something that deliberately ties me back to the site, which is where we'll be going in a second. But I love the fact that in the reports you talk about, okay, this is the personality type, these are the strengths and weaknesses, these are the jobs that they'll probably enjoy the most. Now, that report alone is absolute gold for a writer who's got to create characters, or for a copywriter who is trying to write for a particular kind of customer, i.e. middle managers. Yeah, middle managers tend to be these personality types. Here's what these personality types react to. Here's what turns these personality types off. And, a classic example of how important this can be is there are a lot of people who don't feel very technical. And I'll bet that we've got maybe 20-30% of our audience right now are more in the feeling side of things. They aren't so much interested in the numbers. So when I'm describing a product to them, I need to talk about the benefits. I need to help them imagine what it's like having this in their life. But the technical specifications turn them off. It almost scares them. And in marketing, what I always do is I always put the fluffy stuff up front and the technical stuff down below, because the techies will skip. The ones who are numbers driven will just skip straight past the fluff. It doesn't put them off. Whereas the technophobes, if they're presented with the technical stuff first, feel inferior and leave.
Well, that's something that it's fascinating whenever the phrase "physician, heal thyself" comes to mind. That we can actually use our own company as an example of that we have to go outside of our bubble, because Manny and I are both the exact same type, which means that our strengths are amplified and our blind spots are amplified. So it's more incumbent upon us to reach out to other people to get these different perspectives. Because sometimes we can approach something, we'll go, that's an attractive message. And then we'll realize later, well, yeah, that's an attractive message to our type. And our type only makes up 4% of the population.
And when you hear someone say organizational dynamics, even in, like, the narrative has a dynamic, but when you go into an organization, if two people are a particular type and the rest are different, you can see the physics of the two people pulling synergistically the rest of the group towards an opinion. Until you become aware of it, the collective unconscious is like a mathematical mass that moves in that direction. I won't geek the light fantastic, but it's just, to me, I found that over the years, and I think, Ammon, you and I were discussing this, I'm like what's called an intuitive empath. So I go looking for the data based on the model that I've internalized, the pattern that I see, but I see the emotions between the people. I can feel that. So when I feel the pull, I'm like, no, this guy, he's feeling overwhelmed by being surrounded by you guys. You guys should probably hire a person like this. Him and him with their desks next to each other, I would like some orange cones around that for the violence, stuff like that. So organizational productivity goes better when two people are not rubbing each other into stress states 8 hours a day.
Okay, we're not quite late enough a show to be talking about people rubbing each other. I'll leave that to Grizz and his After Dark show. That might be one of his peers, I don't know.
Well, one of my questions, which maybe you can help us out with, since this even goes to the website design, is that we're already having success in the larger organization channels. In fact, we're finding that our message is, the larger the company is, the shorter the conversation it ends up being to become, getting a business relationship. But that doesn't mean that maybe we're succeeding in spite of our messaging, or maybe we're succeeding because of our messaging. So if there's two pathways, and I wouldn't call them mutually exclusive or anything, but one pathway is an improvement message. We can make your meetings smarter. We can help you make smarter decisions. So that would be the positive messaging. The other direction becomes you're making mistakes you don't even know about. You have blind spots you don't know that you even have. You have weaknesses that are completely invisible to you in your organization. So we tend to focus on the positive messaging in our site right now. If I had to say that what's the bulk of our messaging, it tends to be the positive. But do you think that the pain point is where should we increase or decrease the pain point messaging?
Ultimately, you've got to have it all sides covered. The trick is to make the path work for all. You know the way I just explained a minute ago about having the fluffy stuff up first and then the technical specs, because that's the people who need that technical will skip to it. But that's kind of what you need to do with your site. There are people who are going to understand all the positives, and there's people who are going to need the negatives. There's those who are aspirational, and there's those who are more motivated by fear and worry. You've got to have stuff for both. What you've got to do is decide which order is the right order to approach those in, which is not going to put off the other. And ultimately arrange your site architecture so that they can flow. And often that's a case of doing a very simple how can we help path through your site. So it starts off with, okay, you're here. Here's some of the things we can do. If you're not immediately knowing what product you want, come here. Let us walk you through. And then that has some sample questions, and the answer to that is A, helping you start profiling them, but B, it's immediately letting you hone in on specifics for their job and whether they are worried about things and you need to target the worries, or whether they're aspirational and that's the direction they want to go. I think one of the things with the big companies is they understand process, they understand smoothing things, and a lot of, therefore, particularly the team building stuff, that stuff a big company is perfectly okay with. A lot of them have already done team building. They have time set aside for that. It's in their culture. The small business isn't going to go for that. And when I say small business, I mean up to 80 employees. Still probably not going to go there. The only team he would be interested in doing team building for is his sales team. They are far more interested in making the money. So angling it as here's how we can make your sales pitches more effective more of the time. Here's how we can explain when somebody is raising questions how you will know which personality type they are, and therefore which of your various sales benefits are the ones.
That's interesting. We already have a product developed around that we don't even have on our site. It's not even up on the site.
But that is the small business product. That's the one they're going to buy, because that's the one with the ROI. It's that shortest path to profit. Training a team, it's out there. It's very nice, but they can't see the money in it yet because their turnover isn't big enough. The big company, yeah, efficiency, getting that machine working, that's where they live, and that's going to be why you're succeeding. Is at the moment you're probably angling a bit towards that. It's a bit more of the touchy-feely stuff, which the big companies understand the importance of teamwork. The small companies, they understand it, but it's just improving 10% on their bottom line isn't make or break. Whereas for the big company, that's millions. For them, that's maybe $100,000.
Well, one of the decisions that we've recently made, and by recently I mean in the last 72 hours, is we've been trying to build a presence in the B2C channel. Okay. And even to the point of having an automated process to where someone could actually go through our site, have an assessment, get an interactive review without any human being involved. Okay. Well, the problem is that we put in 100 times more effort into a channel that has been developing almost a negligible percentage of our revenue. Whereas we spend an hour reaching out to larger corporations, and we've got a client. Okay, so that brings up the question: have we been doing the B2C channel wrong, and that's why we haven't been succeeding in that market? Or is it just that's the nature, and we need to shift and focus away from it entirely and go back to our large corporation pathway exclusively?
That's a great question. It brings us in a way back to our very first show, where we talked about upmarket or mass market. And your product has a slightly upmarket connotation to the price because, you know, you're not idiots. You're not burger flippers, and you can't charge burger flipper money. It can't be done.
Yeah, we found individuals were expecting like $50 and $75 price tags. Well, we have Harvard neuroscientist, MD, and certified psychometrician. You don't get our time for together for an hour for $50. It just doesn't work that way.
So the product that you'd have to do to go mass market is to do the big seminars and workshops where you can get 100 people into a room sharing the cost of a day of your time. And usually what you would do is you would say, right, what would I charge a corporation to do this for a team? And say, right, take that, divide it by all the people, and add some, because no matter what, they're going to be more trouble because a lot of them are going to follow up and have follow-up questions. There's a lot more handing out of cards and things like that, so always double it. But that way, you've got now a mass market product. You can do something for everyone, because I know that, you know, it's a passion. What you do is a passion, and you want to be able to do this for a lot of people. But individually, people can't compete with the kind of money that a corporation can put in, and unless their individual lifestyle is that they are a physician or a very high-class teacher or you know, in some other high-flying job, unless they're in the top 10% of earners, they really can't justify personal development that is at that kind of cost. Even an hour of your time is expensive to them.
Yep. And Ammon, you and I have discussed in the past some of the work that I'm doing locally involves working with high school kids and teaching them about COBA as a system for becoming more conscious, more aware. And to me, more and more I find that nurtures my passion that I have, where I'm like, I want to make sure I'm reaching back and helping the community. And what we found is by setting up structures within the high schools where we get the kids in groups of 4 and we teach them the ricochet rubric and stuff. To me, like, to see them when they have that moment of awareness where they're like, so I can control my brain and my impulses without just shutting down and feeling bad. To me, that's rewarding. And I just wanted to point out, I appreciate that you mentioned that. And then last night, I had a pretty productive meeting with a team. And as we're getting the building and stuff set up, I'm really excited about that. And we'll likely be having a series of those videos online for so that more high school kids can have access to that type of self-awareness and core value alignment. So,
yeah, and there's a couple of things that you definitely want to do there. One is I would have a look at the typical courses of, you know, Psych 101. Look at what's in the curriculum at the moment. Ask a friend who's in that field teaching, and say, right, is there a module that we could develop? Is there a video and a handbook we could provide you that would be useful to everyone taking that course? And if there is, do that. Reach out. You've now done a favour for some of those teachers who may become clients in the future. You've certainly done a lot to brand with those children. You've helped them with life anyway, but in 10 years' time, they are going to be in that workplace. And you're hoping to still be in business in 10 years' time as well. So why not be the company that they've always aspired to work with? And plus, certainly the university kids, their parents have jobs that manage to get their kids into university. So again, something interesting that they're taking home and able to talk to their parents about. It's a good word of mouth, and it makes you feel good, which is the most important thing of all. You're doing something, you're putting it out in the community, which not only makes you feel good, but makes others feel good about you. So I would certainly look into some of the courses that are out there, certainly for the university. I'd also look at the high school courses, things like, over here we have a little bit of social education, which is, trying to teach kids about how they fit into society. Absolutely, there's a lot you could offer to a class like that with a 30-minute or an hour video that simply you can create and then just let the word out through the educational community that this is there and it's free.
Well, there's research already showing that teachers that have incorporated personality type into their instructional model have doubled pass rates. It's not just, oh, well, we boosted scores by the, no, like doubled pass rate, had half as many kids failing. However you want to look at that metric, it's an amazing impact that just a little bit of understanding brings. It's not about changing your instructional design model. It's about making minor changes to how you present things to make sure that you're speaking across the entire personality type spectrum.
Yeah.
That's where even getting down to this in a nutshell is what we help people do. It's like when we explain things, Manny and I, our number one cognitive skill is intuition. Okay? Now, here's where it can be a problem. Sometimes we'll use a metaphor that only someone else with intuition as their strongest skill will get because we made a very tenuous connection. Someone who is below a certain threshold, it'll just go over their head, and we look like we're rambling, that we're not making sense. But to us, we're like, well, can't you? The pattern's right there, the connection's right there. We all do this when we communicate, no matter what it is we're doing, whether we're marketing, writing a novel, teaching a class, or pitching to investors. That's the kind of problems that we try and solve.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing that I've learned to do over the years when I'm trying to explain elements of SEO, which is quite an esoteric skill in itself, is to explain everything three ways. And first, state it factually, then give a very broad kind of analogy that everyone can hook into. And specifically, I'm thinking, would my grandmother get this? Would my mother understand this? And if they wouldn't, you haven't got it right. And then the final one, which hones in on the details a little bit more. But the three times of explaining it in three different ways, because it's three different ways, it highlights it rather than gets repetitive. But you're hitting different markets, and each is getting at least one of those things is hitting home, and it's helping put the rest into place.
We're Americans. We don't mind repeating ourselves. It's fine. We're world famous for this quality, I think. So.
It's the thing you do anyway whenever you're pitching anything is, say it three times. First tell them what you're going to say it, then remind them what you said. The rule of three is always in there, but I always think tell them what you're going to say in one way, then explain it in another, and then remind them with an analogy, a story, something they're going to easily put it into place with.
Well, I'm seeing an interesting thing here that some of the comments are that personal development has an icky sound to it, and of course, Chris Vogelman is on a pathway to make psychometrics, sexy. That's a challenge. I think it can be done though.
However, you can actually go better than sexy. You can make it romantic. Let me give you an example. Where you want to try and tie into the home market is not the ordinary everyday Joe, but that couple who are having their child and are interested in all the well-being of the child. We're talking the kind of people who, think what they eat and think what they listen to and think what they do because of its effect on the child. Well, that's somebody who would invest a couple of $100 in creating a better relationship throughout the term of that pregnancy, but also to understand those are, the early stages, so that they're giving the best setting.
It's interesting you bring that up, because that in the B2C channel, the ones that have resonated the most have been those two groups you're just talking about. Number one, it's couples who are struggling in some way, where this is a non-threatening, non-marital counseling approach to try and tackle those things. So people that have an aversion to seeing a counselor are far less resistant to seeing me and Manny. But also, we can make a pretty bold claim with kids, high school kids about to enter college, that we can shave a year or two of academic wandering and lower performance for just about any kid you throw our way. Unless you're dealing with a kid who's like, I know exactly the pathway, because there are some kids, they know exactly where they're going. But all of us have met the high-performing kids that are like, I don't know. Well, with some self-awareness, we can provide a lot of efficiency in finding the pathway. Well, that becomes, for some colleges, we're saying, look, for $500, you can save $25,000 in tuition, or more, depending on what the college is. It becomes an easy cost message, whereas personal development is just like, well, okay, so I'll be better. What can I do with that?
Exactly, and what you're always looking for is look for places where people will spend money already. And so one of the things about the couple having a child who want that, well, look at what they're already spending on creating a better environment. Look at what the average family will spend on that first nursery, and on creating that first nursery and furnishing it and all the clothes and things like that, to have everything just right for that first baby. So that A, they are in a market because they're prepared to spend money, and B, that they are interested in these things enough to spend that money and therefore are worth speaking to. If you're having to create the desire in them in the first place, it's always much harder to sell. It's fine if you've got the profit margins to support it, but that gets away from where you want to be. And with the average couple, there is a fixed price as to how far this can go. Now, again, it's something that might be offered in two ways. It could be that you do a tie-in with prenatal clinics and hospitals and midwives, and run group classes for aspiring parents. That was simply a 1-hour course on what was a good way to get your relationship in shape to support that baby and to support your wife in having that baby all the way through. That's great. As an easy sell, and you've got other people selling it for you, the doctors, the midwives, the clinic, they're doing the sales, so it's taking a lot of the work away and you're just doing the bit that pays.
So the big takeaway is that when we're dealing with individuals and couples, staying in a one-to-many pathway.
For most people, for anybody else.
I got you. I mean, but that's the general thrust, is that whenever we're dealing with the B2C channel, it's in a one-to-many setting.
Exactly, because most people are not in the market for a Ferrari. And in terms of personal development, compared to what most people will do, which is buy a book, your cost is Ferrari-like compared to that. So understand that, there's going to be a few in that market. There's going to be the high flyers who want to spend that kind of money. That's great. And it's fine to have on your site that you do this, but don't expect it to sell. Don't try and push it too hard. It's a bit like the marketing for Lamborghini or Ferrari. Most people who see an ad are never going to get one. They're never going to be in the market to get one. They'd never even be able to afford to get one. But it's their desire. It's their aspiration. It's their understanding that that's the car that makes the ones who can afford it want it to show off to all of those ones who can't have it.
Right. Well, one of the things that I was hoping that we could we could deal with today, and of course this will factor in some of the things we've already talked about today, is if you had any feedback on our website.
Yeah, I'm gonna kick over to Lee in a moment because this really ties in. But a couple of things I'll quickly bring up. Okay, so this is the home page, and you've got a script that refreshes this image, and it goes through several. Unfortunately, the code that runs that it's quite a lot of code, and it's on every page. It's on every single page through this blog, and if you could instead use a different template for some parts of it, either take it out of posts and it's only in the page templates, and therefore you use page when you're going to have it, and use post template.
Yeah, unfortunately, what you're talking about, it's actually embedded in the template itself. That's how it makes all the pages. It's on everything, and then it adds a code to not show the slideshow on every page.
Yeah, but Craig, we could probably have one of the devs take a look at that. No?
I'm sure we can. And a lot of it, that's phenomenal feedback to even bring it up, because I hadn't thought of that from a site speed and even SEO perspective.
Yeah. Now, next I'm pulling up the fact that the site doesn't resize very well. As I pulled this in, let me see, just over here, you can see it starts to cut off the links. It's not wrapping neatly, and that's not a tiny screen that we've gone down to. Certainly, long before it gets down to cell phone size, it's going to break. So, you know, that's another thing.
It needs to be more multiple device friendly. Yeah. There's no question about that.
Yeah.
There is
if you can't get it fully, fully responsive, do consider a mobile site as a separate thing, if that was easier for you to achieve. If you were quite happy with most of the display, you'd certainly want that. I think generally, though, I'm not over keen on the design generally. It doesn't look very slick, and we are talking about an aspirational high-end product, so we want to see a kind of aspirational high-end site. And the underlines on the
one of our areas of reinvestment, because if you look at our credentials, Manny's a neuroscientist, I'm a psychometrician. Neither one of us are professional web designers or graphic designers. Any skills that we picked up, we've done so through brute force and repetition. It's not a natural skill that we have. So.
Okay. Sometimes that side menu with navigation is there. Sometimes it isn't. That's another thing. On this page for teachers, there's no side menu for the navigation, but physicians do get a side menu. Same level through.
Yeah, so that was an oversight. I fixed that, by the way, when I saw your comment there. So that's actually already been fixed.
And this one is, of course, the video posts. Is that you're using the same snippet in the post that's about them all as you've got on the page, and really this is something where short snippet, but then have a longer snippet as well, a more in-depth thing of what they can find in here. Even sometimes you break the videos down into chunks and do a little paragraph about each, but you want the video page to be specific to that video and to have some unique content on it, not just what was on another page before.
Excellent suggestion.
Lee?
I would say on that theme, you don't have to spend a ton of money redeveloping, redesign, whatever. With My Site My Way, the theme or the theme developers, there are responsive skins for it, and they're much better designs as well. So I'd have a look around there. I'll post you a link to that later on if you like. The good news is on security-wise on it, I had a look. There's no malware or anything like that embedded within the site itself. You're hosting with Bluehost. They're okay. They're not brilliant, but they're about just as good as anybody else. The WordPress version, I know a lot of this stuff is kind of not really relevant to you, but I'm going to go through it anyway because it's my job. WordPress is 3.9.2, which was up to date until a couple of days ago. Now it's gone up to number 4. I wouldn't stress over that too much. Plugins, you're using Yoast. there's hub, so share buttons for Twitter, Facebook, Google, blah, blah, blah. That, again, adds loads and loads of scripts all over the shop, and it's not used everywhere. Overall, and I'm just skipping through this really quickly, overall, how do I contact you? There is a number at the top, but it's not really obvious, and I'm not local to you, so I don't know. Is that an American number? It's not an international number. Where do I sign up for your newsletter? Where do I get free stuff? Those kind of things, the usual marketing pools. One thing I would change, you have got on some of the on the blog posts, you've got posted by, and that links to an author's page. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, essentially, but if I was going to hack into your site and I wanted to know an admin name, I'd go there and I'd find out, well, that's an admin name straight away. So all I've got to do now is guess your password, and I'm straight in. The header images and all the blog pages, they open up in a modal, which is like another pop-up window, but are actually the same size.
Could you elaborate on that one? I'm not sure if I follow your point there.
I think he's just frozen. Yeah, he'll be back to finish that point in a minute, I'm sure.
Well, that was an info-packed rant he just went on, which I'm very appreciative of. Those are all golden points.
The code size is definitely an issue generally. You know, when I was looking, pull up the site, right-click, code view, that's a lot of page. And when you look at how much of it is the stuff that's actually appearing on the page, we're talking less than 10% of the code is actually turning up on the page anyway. And a lot of the code is embedded into the page that's served rather than external JavaScript files, external CSS files. Paying a developer to tune this up wouldn't be a huge expense, and it would be very, very valuable.
Excellent point.
Yeah, I think Lee's back, so if
Am
you
I
wanted
back?
to ask that question.
Oh, yes, you are back.
I thought you kicked me out. I thought I was just waffling on too much, and the hook came in and took me out. The only last thing was, as I said, the blog header images. When you click on them, because they're linked in, when you click on it and open up another window, there's actually no need for that. On two reasons. Why do I want to see a header image larger? And also, they only load up exactly the same size as they are on the page, and if not smaller as well. If you got rid of that, that would reduce the code size of the page as well.
Yep, and that's just a straight-up oversight of mine, something that you often find with ENTPs. Because I know it's because I neglected to clear out the link to, for that image. That's my fault.
I mean, because it's linked in, it naturally puts in the code for the modal and all the rest of it as well. So take that link out and that disappear.
Yeah. There's one other thing I wanted to bring up that I know I did mention briefly before the show, and that's a pain point that you are going to experience because you're ENTPs, and some of our audience are going to find because they're creatives as well, and that's that you're so passionate about what you do that sometimes you need to remember that phrase, shut up and take my money. There is a point at which we get so excited about what we're talking about. We love explaining what we do, but they're already sold. It's almost you had me at hello, and you've got to sometimes close it off, lead it to that sale. You know, be careful you don't give away too much.
Yeah, luckily we've only done this for a small handful of types. But yeah, there are some actual types that they could get everything they need just from a couple of videos that we've already done. They would, as individuals, they wouldn't need, or at least they wouldn't feel that they would, additional sessions just with me and Manny, because you're right, we forget to. We really love what we do. Right? Like, we have fun doing assessments. This is something that, we're happy that we're getting successful with corporations, and we like the impact that we have there, but nothing beats a one-on-one changing somebody's life feeling. I mean, it's almost hard to explain how powerful, and how intoxicating that can be.
And also one of my passions was getting the information out there to people, because I have personal issues with the whole paywall to health model. I don't believe that you should be holding, well, I mean, I'm learning how the real world works, I guess, but I've always been one that I believe that information that would help people understand themselves and perform better shouldn't be kept from them because of money they can't get because they can't perform or feel better. So that's something I guess I've been working through and reframing myself.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where you'll love this because it's complex. You know, we don't have to put everything behind a paywall. Now, I give away a lot of SEO advice. Why? Because the people who aren't my market but would waste a lot of my time with questions would otherwise be asking me this stuff anyway. Put it out there, they can self-serve, they're now not wasting my time. And the people who are my customers, that's still only a taste. If I'm giving that away, they want to know what I'm selling. And more importantly, it's often that thing I've talked about on a Susie chat, and we've talked about on other things here. Yeah, great. I love the idea. Can you do it for me? That's your customer. That is your customer, the one who wants you to do it for them. And that's exactly what you want to do, is get rid of the ones who aren't that people. And if that means giving them the answer so they go away, that's doing yourself a favour. So don't be afraid of oversharing that kind of stuff, because your real market is the ones who want it made specific to them. You know, that's the difference between the advice I give generally and a paid consultation. Now, here, this is exactly, you know, the kind of specific advice you would get in a paid consultation. Does that mean that I'm giving a paid consultation to all of the audience? No, exactly, no. They get to see how personalized this is. They get to see what they could have, but it's still, although it's better than general, it's put into a context, it's still not made for them. It's still something they're going to have to put a lot of thought into to convert it for their model. And what I'm really selling a lot of the time is doing a lot of that thinking for you, helping you work out between different choices which is the best route to take. And that's kind of where you need to live as well.
So that's interesting. So like a way that we could conceivably replicate what you're doing in this show in our business model, say with couples, where we could do a live couples assessment, and we could give advice to a couple and how to improve their issues, but that doesn't help all couples, because it would only, you know, like the live assessment that we did with Dennis and Cheryl Deuce, you know. Well, that particular assessment only applies to an ENFP and an INFP that are married together, that have the wild and wacky personalities that both of those people happen to have.
Yeah. The better way of doing it would be to go through the students again. Find some of those students who maybe are struggling over what's going to be their career, and give them a one-on-one consultation, or better still, get 3 or 4 of them together that are different personality types. Give them a consultation on having a look at what kind of careers they're interested in, which ones suit their personality type, what might be their challenges, walk them through it. Now, you're doing a good project. This is helping you get that education into schools, and it's also showing your personalized approach and how this can make somebody more profitable, more focused, more able to be a successful businessman, entrepreneur, salesman, whatever it is. You're showing the path to success and how this can help in a way that isn't so specific as the couples therapy, because we all like to think that, you know, well, let's face it, no two couples are quite alike. The dynamic is always so different. That's part of the fun. And so I think instead, look at the young entrepreneurs, people just about to leave, or ones that are doing a marketing course or business masters, you know, where they're having to come up with a project, and you help them align their core values with getting that project going better. you're showing the profit, and that works across all of your markets because it's one-to-one, so it's on the personal bit. It's on the education side for giving away your free education resources. It's an extra thing for them. And it's showing it in a professional sense as well, which is for your business market.
Well, one of the best ideas that came up in the brief few minutes that we had before the show went live is to split our business direction and our individual personal direction into two different domains, into two different sites, which I think is the biggest at least one of the biggest takeaways from me today, because we did not want to get rid of the individual channel just because it's where our most enjoyment comes from.
Yeah.
But we're also quite aware that it's not what pays the bills. It's the business channel that does that. I can even compare it to business writing. In my background is where I made my money. I think I've made enough money from my novel to eat at Wendy's. But you know, I enjoyed writing it, so it's all good.
It's one of the things. A lot of people in my position say, "Oh, we love the small business. I want to support the small business," and I do appreciate that. Some of my best stories are exactly as you say. There was a couple living in Nova Scotia. He'd been a salesman and got so fed up of that, especially as a married man and starting a family. He was being passed over for promotion, and he was reaching that point where now he was never going to get up that ladder. He was on a $50,000 salary, but it was deeply unsatisfying. They quit, went to live in a cabin in the woods in Nova Scotia, and started producing these wooden craft items. And I'm going way, way back, and I built them a website, and they got an order in from, of all places, Asia. So actually selling stuff to Asia instead of the reverse. And it basically gave them 3 years' work. This was one of their first 3 months of orders, and it was all through just changing the way they were presenting themselves, the way the website worked. And yeah, absolutely, that's a story that's heartwarming. You know, I've taken a family that was struggling, living very much the life of the struggling artist, and they're set for years. Not only themselves, but they can now grow this business, and if they want to pass it on to their children, they probably can. That's heartwarming, of course it is. But the corollary to that is that I can work for a big company, and I can help 1,000 people earn more money and take more money home and put their kids through university and give them a better life and create wonderful new companies and create more opportunities for all and invent new things. So actually, in a lot of ways, the larger good is done by helping the larger companies. And I know we like to think that these companies are all very greedy, but they are. But look at what Google is doing for us right now. It's as grasping a company in some ways as you can get. You do not understand yet how much of the future Google owns. But their investment in robotics, they own something like 80% of the world's best minds of this now work for a company that is owned by Google. The direction that this is going to go is being steered by Google's money and Google's investment. The same with, you know, the analytics software market. Once Google provided Google Analytics for free, they killed off hundreds of small businesses that were providing analytics companies. They killed off the market for the open source ones because Google was already free. How were you going to beat free with free? You weren't. You know, maybe you can do a better product for money, but you can't do a better product for free. And, you know, these things all make changes. But the flip side to that is Google does some damn good things for the rest of us. A lot of people with Google Fiber who are very glad of Google. Thank you very much.
Well, we were definitely happy when we picked up Motorola as a client. There's no that was a good day in the office. That's for sure. Definite smiles on our face. And of course, they're owned by Google now. So,
Well, we're at the top of the hour, and I'd honestly love to carry this on. But we have to call it off there. So let me hand it over for final words. Craig?
Well, I can definitely tell you that I've gained more insight and clarity over ways that we can fix problems. We'd already identified some of the problems, but we just hadn't quite clarified where we're going to go. And I'm incredibly thankful for the insight on not only how can we sort of hone our message, but also splitting into the two channels. I think that's essential to bring more clarity to mindful360.com for where the focus needs to be, on the larger organizations. That's Manny is known for the phrase "go where you're beautiful," and that's where we're already beautiful. We're already needed. We don't have to convince. We just have to say, "Hey, we're here," in that channel.
Yeah, and don't be afraid to play both ends of the market with mass market products, the big seminars, the help yourself workshop, video courses and things like that. Don't be afraid to do that and have the bespoke products, which are always, more aspirational, the business things, the team leadership, those should be the higher price tag, more aspirational items, and you've got to tie them to ROI. Manny?
Well, I'm especially grateful for the insight on how looking at working with bigger organizations can be seen as helping more people. So I like that. That in particular was something that will stick with me. So I appreciate that, as well as all of the advice and guidance you gave us before and during this session. That was really helpful. A lot of clarity. Thank you.
Lee, final thoughts before I wrap up?
I've learned a lot about this company, and I can understand the product a little bit better. A little bit better now. Can't speak properly. On Tuesday, I've got a great experimental hangout coming up. Follow my stream up there. Yeah, follow the stream, and you'll find all out about it.
Excellent. With complex products, it's very important to very quickly be able to tie this into something that's not that complex at all. It's a problem. So we need to understand that most people are looking for one of three things. They want to either save time and effort, because laziness is a huge motivator. They want to make more money, or they want to feel better. Pleasure is also a market. And knowing which ones people will pay for and under which circumstances is always part of your market. And one of the things to do that we talked about very early on in this show, but I'll come back to finish up, is understanding very early on that some people need to be walked through, and then you need to say, okay, tell me about yourself. Let's see what we can do for you. And okay, what job are you in? Okay, now we've got these 6 things. Would you like to see what one of those is, or would you like to talk about your personal life? And just give people that little conversational walkthrough in your site so that they can say, I'm a writer. Oh, great. Well, if you're writing commercially, this will help you reach your audience better. And that includes if you're a commercial author of fiction. We'll still the things that will make a better story for your audience. Or if you need to create characters, we can do that. If you're a teacher, this is how you can teach your students more effectively. If you're a team leader, then these are the things. Just walking them through, understanding where they are, will instantly make it much clearer to you what their pain points are, and you are able to then ask, would you like this? And they're, hell yeah! So that's my closing thought for this week. Thank you everyone for joining us, and see you next week.
Cheers.